Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, dear listeners. It is a brisk late October morning, October 23rd to be precise. I'm speaking to you as I walk home from dropping my son off at school. Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver. If this is your first episode listening, I hope you're enjoying it so far. This is the whole thing. Me chatting while I take a walk. Hopefully my heavy breathing from my poor physical condition is not too annoying. So today, for the second time in a week, I'm going to do an episode reflecting on some new games I've played. I did one I think 2 episodes ago, and it was really fun just to talk games a little bit rather than having a big theme. And then last night at Toggle Gaming, the weekly meetup I go to in Palatine, Illinois, I got to play 4 new games. So I'm going to try discussing those with you today in a new segment, or an expansion of an old segment, Shootin' from the Hip, Quartet. For those of you new to the podcast, Shootin' from the Hip is a segment I do where I talk about a game that I've played only a couple times. Generally, I don't have enough experience with it to give it a proper review, and I generally try not to do reviews on this podcast anyway, because I am a game designer, and I feel like reviewing games is a little bit off-center from the task of designing games. If I'm designing games and also reviewing, it feels a little bit like critiquing my competitors. That said, I am happy to share my experiences with games and leave the reviewing part up to you. It's a fine distinction that may not matter to you, and you may not even consider it a distinction, but I do. So, with that caveat, the Shootin' from the Hip segment is where I review games I've only played once or twice, and that's what I'm going to do today. So last night at Toggle Gaming, I got to try 4 games for the first time. One of them I played twice, the others I played once each. So here we go. The first game, and the game that I got to play twice, was the featured game of the week last night at Toggle. This is QE, Quantitative Easing. Quantitative easing is the fancy schmancy financial term for printing money. In this game, you play a World Bank, or a national bank of one of 5 major countries. You can be the US, the EU, China, Japan, and the UK. The idea is a whole bunch of companies, it's 2008 and a whole bunch of companies are failing, and they need to be saved because they're too big to fail. So the idea is, as one of these governments, you're going to buy the company or save it by spending money. The unique quirk of this game is that when you're bidding, you can bid any amount you'd like as long as it's a whole integer, or a whole number and positive. And the bidding is done in secret. So the way the game works is whoever goes first, the auctioneer, sets the opening bid, and they do that publicly. So you get to see what the opening bid for the company is going to be. Then everyone else makes a bid in secret, and at the end of the bid, and turns those into the auctioneer. The auctioneer reviews those secret bids and announces who won. Then they record how much that person spent, and that person wins the tile and gets some points. Anyone who bid 0 can get an extra point each round. Each round you can get an extra point for bidding 0 or 2 points, and there's a set collection element to which companies you buy. The twist of this game, and the thing that makes it exciting to pitch to people, is that you're allowed to bet any amount of money that you want. Because you are a government bank, you can just print money, and the idea is that as long as you don't collapse your own economy trying to save these businesses, things will be better off for your country. At the end of the game, everyone adds up how much money they spent, and the person who spent the most money is eliminated, as everyone else stays in, and we find out who won. It's an interesting game because the bidding, and both games of it I played, we played with 5 people, so the max count. And in the game, you only know the bid of yourself the public bid, and you know the winner when you're the auctioneer. In a 5-player game, you can also look at one other winning bid anytime during the game once. So it's a really interesting mechanism because inevitably the prices for things go up as the game goes along, because the people who've spent a lot of money start prompting the opening bids to be high so that they aren't the one who spent the most, because in order to buy something new, you have to spend more. I really enjoyed this game. It was a lot of fun. It's not too hard. It's about 45 minutes to play. I don't think it would take much of a spot in my collection because it seems more like a gimmick than a game I would enjoy playing many, many times. There's too little information for me to really enjoy the strategic elements of figuring out how much to bid and that sort of thing. So fun, but not exactly the kind of game I would want to play more than a handful of times. That said, I'm sure if people are putting together a game of QE, they invite me to join, I certainly wouldn't say no. That's QE, Quantitative Easing. The new version is published by BoardGameTables.com. I regret to say I forget the name of the designer. I think that's true of every game I'm going to talk about today. So the second game I want to talk about is I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of a trick-taking game. Not really. It's a trick-focused game in which you score points based on sets of cards played. It's called 5-2-1-1. The idea is you start with 5 cards in your hand. You play 2 cards, then draw back up, then play 1 card, then draw back up, then play 1 card and draw back up. As you're doing that, you're matching colors and playing these lizard cards, which count as 1 point. And at the end of the round, if at any time there's exactly 6 lizards out, the round is over. Those lizards score, which means you take it into your score pile. And all the rest of the cards are discarded. If we reach the point where we've all played 4 cards in the round, then the round is over, and we compare the different colors of cards that have been played. If any of them, if the number of cards out exceeds the bust number, which I believe was 7, those cards are removed. Then if the number of cards of a particular color tie, then those cards are out. And then finally you compare the number of cards, then finally you score whichever set of cards has the most cards out of the remaining set, which sometimes will be like, we had one hand where it was 1 card that was left because we got to the end and we had a tie for first, so we lost 2 of the colors and there was only 1 of the color on the board or something. Or maybe we had more than 7 of one color, so that was gone. Then we had a tie for the next 2 colors, that left 1 on the board. Then at the end of the game, you play till the deck runs out. At the end of the game, you are going to score the cards in your scoring pile. It was fine. I didn't really find it very exciting and probably wouldn't volunteer to play it again. I mean, I really enjoy a lot of different games. I do consider myself an omni gamer. So if I were at a game night and someone got that out and really wanted to play it, I would probably join them. But I'm not really very keen to play it again myself. That's 5-2-1-1. I think it's Z-Man, but don't quote me on that. The third game I got to try was a Kickstarter game I got a long time ago. I'm afraid, I don't remember the publisher or the author. It's called Escape the Nightmare. It's a real-time co-op silly game. I designate a game silly when it has you doing things that aren't really gameplay specific, but rather extra gameplay specific. So, for example, Mansions of Madness has insanity cards that alter the way you can communicate with other players. Escape the Nightmare does as well. In this game, you are working as a group to get some matches of cards to discard these wardens, which are sort of the villains of the game. And while you do that by trading cards with other people. Well, whenever you trade a card with someone, its effect whatever card you get causes you to have to do something. It might be a restriction in the way you can communicate. It might be something funny you have to do, like singing or asking someone for a hug, or it might be something having to do with the trades. There's one person who's going to have a card called It's Coming, which represents the scary thing in the nightmare that's chasing us. And they're constantly counting out loud down from 30. And they're trying to get rid of the card. So if they ever get all the way down to the bottom, then we take a hit, and 2 hits, you're out. There's doomed and certainly doomed. If you're doomed already, and you get doomed again, you get certainly doomed, and that's the end of the game. The other thing is, so the only way to reset the counter is while you're counting, you trade that card to someone else. There's a variety of other things that can happen, but it's a silly 5-minute game. I thought it was fine. I think the other people at the table, they didn't like it enough to try it a second time, even though it was only 5 minutes. So that says something. I think it would have been a fun game to play with my family. My kids would definitely like games like that. However, the art on the game is distinctly grown up. There's a little bit of nudity and quite a bit of sort of gross horror because it's a horror game. It's called Escape the Nightmare. So the art are these sort of pencil sketches that remind me of the black and white drawings from the inside of like the Monster Manual in the 1980s. But ultimately they don't, ultimately it's not family friendly, even though it really is a family style game, or I would suggest it's a family style game. And for that reason, I think I'm going to get rid of it, because I don't see myself wanting to play this with the kids because of the art, and I know my wife wouldn't enjoy it. And having played it with some people at Toggle, I know they didn't really get that much out of it either. So I think I'm going to pass it along to another gamer, someone who appreciates it more. So that's Escape the Nightmare. That's 3 of 4 Shootin' from the hips. The fourth one is a game that I was not planning on playing. Those other 3 I kind of knew ahead of time that I might play. The fourth one was a surprise. We had a group of 5 and we were trying to find a good game that would fit us all. And so we pulled off Suspicion off of the shelf. Suspicion is a deduction mystery game in the style of Clue. It's a bit more complex than Clue, but also a bit more rewarding. You know, in Clue, you're trying to figure out who did the murder and where and with what. In Suspicion, you are a jewel thief at a big party where there's lots of jewels. The other players are all characters on the board secretly, and they're all jewel thieves as well. So your goal in the game is to figure out which of the other players is which jewel thief, and you get points for that. And also to steal jewels in certain collection sets, which will get you points as well. There's a variety of cards that give you actions and so on. So it's relatively easy to understand. This is a fine non-gamers game. I think it's a little light for my taste in terms of playing with other gamers. But if you're playing with non-gamers and you want to play something a little more satisfying than Clue, this would be a nice choice. The style on the box is really tight. It has a kind of minimalist look with the 1950s style drawings. And the art inside the box is fine, except that the playing pieces and the colors they chose for them are all very similar. And I think that limits their use. They're a bit annoying that way. Almost more importantly, as I think back on it, my big complaint about 5211 is the cards are very difficult to read. Some of the numbers are really hard to understand in low light, and the difference between the blue and the green is minimal. You can tell what kind of card the card is based on the card art, but it's not highly iconographic. It's kind of abstract, which actually makes it pretty difficult to easily identify. It would be nice if they had done a little bit more for quick and easy identification graphically. The yellow cards should definitely have, the yellow numbers and image should definitely have black borders around them so they're easier to see. And I'd say the edges of the cards, you could have just made the border around the drawing squiggles or dots or whatever in different forms so you could easily tell what color or what suit the cards are. So that was a major letdown in 5211. So back to Suspicion. Suspicion was an interesting deduction game. like in Clue or any game of that ilk, you are asking questions to the other players and using that to solve the mystery using an elaborate set of marks on a little piece of paper. It was good. I was a little frustrated because I was having trouble figuring out a set of marks that I should use, and I screwed up somewhere along the line, which resulted in me making drastic mistakes about the quality of the game. That said, it was fun. Definitely better than regular Clue. I would say not as good as Mystery of the Abbey, but that game is pretty long, whereas Suspicion played in less than an hour. I think 40 minutes or so with the teach. So I would say if you get a chance and you enjoy deduction style games, Suspicion is a fine option for a light game. So what have you been playing that's new, dear listener? It's near the end of October. Have you gotten any scary games in? I'm afraid the only one I've played is Escape the Nightmare. I'd like to get some more to the table, but we'll see. It is already October 23rd here in suburban Chicago. So hop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let us know what you've been playing. And until next time, I thank you for joining me, and I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.